Since 1850, human activities such as agriculture, fossil fuel combustion, and urban growth have significantly accelerated climate change. These activities release vast quantities of greenhouse gases, GHGs, like carbon dioxide, CO, and methane, carbon tetrahydride, which trap heat in the atmosphere, driving global warming. Let's explore each sector, how they vary across the world, and their contributions to climate change. Agriculture and its impact. Agriculture is a major contributor to climate change, accounting for about 25% of global GHG emissions. The emissions primarily come from livestock, land use changes, and crop production, pastoral farming and deforestation. Livestock such as cattle emit methane, which is particularly harmful due to its warming potential being 84 times higher than carbon dioxide over a 20-year period. Deforestation, which involves clearing forests for farmland, releases carbon stored in trees and soil. This is especially significant in regions like the Amazon rainforest, which acts as a vital carbon sink. 2. Draining peatlands. Peatlands, although covering less than 3% of the world's land area, store twice as much carbon as forests. Draining these areas allows for decomposition, releasing methane into the atmosphere. Drained peatlands are often used for pastoral agriculture but come with additional risks, such as increased flood potential downstream due to reduced water storage capacity. Some farmers also burn peat as a fuel source or to create habitats for game birds like grouse, further contributing to emissions. 3. Rice paddies. Anaerobic decomposition in waterlogged rice fields emits large amounts of methane. This is especially critical in Asia, where 90% of global rice is produced, with China alone accounting for 11% of agricultural methane emissions. How agricultural contributions vary globally. South America. Brazil contributes to 60% of Amazon deforestation, largely for cattle ranching and soy production, making the region responsible for 20% of global deforestation emissions. Sub-Saharan Africa. Deforestation here is driven by small-scale farming and fuelwood extraction, representing a growing share of emissions. Globally, tropical forests in Latin America, Africa, and Asia are hotspots for deforestation, collectively contributing 10–12% of global GHG emissions. Fossil fuel combustion. Fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas have been the backbone of industrialization and economic growth but are the largest contributors to climate change. By 2021, fossil fuel combustion accounted for over 75% of global GHG emissions. Electricity and heating. North America. The United States is historically the largest emitter, responsible for 25% of global cumulative emissions since 1750. While emissions peaked in the early 2000s, the US remains among the highest emitters per capita. Asia. China surpassed the US as the largest annual emitter around 2006, now contributing 30% of the world's fossil fuel emissions. Much of this is due to coal-fired power plants, which are used to manufacture goods for global consumption. This reflects the shift in many economies to tertiary and quaternary sectors while outsourcing industrial production to developing nations. Europe. European nations, such as Germany and the UK, were early leaders in industrialization. However, emissions have decreased in recent decades due to investments in renewable energy and energy efficiency. 2. Industrial processes. Manufacturing in developing regions like Asia has led to a shift in global emissions. For instance, India's manufacturing sector saw its emissions grow by 335% between 1990 and 2018. Urban growth. Urbanization is another significant driver of GHG emissions, particularly in transportation, construction, and energy use. Cities not only consume large amounts of energy but also reduce natural carbon sinks like forests. 1. Global urbanization trends. In 1950, less than 30% of the world's population lived in urban areas. Today, over 56% of people live in cities, and this number is projected to rise to 70% by 2050. Urbanization increases demand for energy, fossil fuel-based transport, and infrastructure. 2. Transportation emissions. North America. High reliance on personal vehicles in the US makes transportation the source of 29% of national GHG emissions. Europe. Cities like Copenhagen and Amsterdam lead by example with sustainable public transport systems and cycling infrastructure, demonstrating lower per capita emissions. Asia. Rapid urban growth in cities like Mumbai and Jakarta has driven up emissions from transport and infrastructure reliant on fossil fuels. Construction emissions. Africa. Although the continent's urban emissions remain low, rapid urban growth and deforestation for city expansion are on the rise. Asia. In countries like China and India, urbanization has fueled emissions from cement, 7%, and steel, 11%, production, both of which are major contributors to global carbon dioxide emissions. Comparative impacts on climate change. North America and Europe have contributed to over 50% of cumulative carbon dioxide emissions since 1750, despite having less than 20% of the global population. Africa and South America, on the other hand, account for less than 10% of historical emissions, highlighting global disparities in responsibility. Future solutions. Industrialized regions must lead the way in reducing emissions through innovation and cleaner technologies. Developing regions need support to adopt sustainable practices, preventing their economic growth from following the same carbon-intensive path. Conclusion: climate change is a global challenge, but its causes and impacts are unevenly distributed. From agriculture and industrial processes to urbanization, every sector plays a role. Addressing these challenges requires a combination of policy, technology, and international cooperation. As students, you play a vital part in understanding and advocating for these changes. Let's strive for a more sustainable future.